All right, what's up, guys? Welcome back to another episode of the Living the Dream podcast. Today on the show, we have Meghana Giridhar, who is the founder of Let's Curate. Meghana, how you doing?
I'm doing so well. How are you? And Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year, and I'm doing well too. It's funny, they're going to be listening to this in like April, but
Oh,
Happy
is that right? But nevertheless, may it be happy throughout the year.
Yes, exactly. And we like to jump right in. So if you could start with telling us a little bit about yourself and what you like to do for fun, that'd be great.
First of all, thank you so much for having me on your podcast. It's always so exciting to speak to new people, and especially people like you when you're focusing on a topic that's so dear to my heart. So, just to give you a brief introduction, I'm the founder of a curator platform called Let's Curate, as you rightly mentioned. And my platform aims to showcase emerging talent, whether it's artists or artisans or anyone within the creative spectrum, and to provide a platform to them. So my platform essentially focuses on independent artisans. So these are people who are not associated with groups or organizations or businesses. They are one man, one woman shows. They are people who conceptualize the idea, get the materials, execute it, promote it, do all of that. I'm very, very amazed at the process that these people have to go through, because it's literally they're the creators, they're the business managers, they're the secretary, they're everything rolled in one. And it's fantastic to see so much talent from around the world. As of now, my platform represents 47 artisans from about 29 countries, and hopefully the number just keeps going up.
That is amazing. What
Thank
was
you.
your motivation behind starting this?
To be honest, I think it was not something where I woke up one day and I said, oh, this is, this amazing, fabulous idea that I have, and I'm going to just drop everything and do it. It was something that was in my mind for many, many years. I was in, I have an MBA in marketing and finance, and I've worked with a bunch of organizations, including venture capital firms, nonprofit organizations. So I was in a typical corporate field. But I am obsessed with traveling. So every time I would travel, I would kind of look for people who you don't see in the typical tourist shops and the cliched stores that you always go to. So it was just an interest of mine, and it so happened that over the years I managed to build connections with a very strange and very interesting group of people from all kinds of countries. And as the years went by, I kind of felt, I don't know, it was a gut instinct where, first of all, I was kind of a little jaded with my job, and I wanted to do something very different. And this seemed to be interesting. And I said, okay, what happened was, as I was talking to these people over the years, I realized that there was major challenges that they were facing. One of them being that they never had the time to actually create. These were people who were so busy setting up their online stores, or some of them didn't even know how to do that. So they were grappling with issues which I felt that they should not really be involved in. They should be involved in the real work, which is actually creating and coming up with ideas. So 2019, around March, I kind of gave it a serious thought, because it had been building up over the years. And that's when I said, okay, I either do it this year or I just drop the idea altogether. Luckily for me, the people that I had kind of built these relationships with over many years, I kind of sounded off this idea and they seemed very receptive to it. And because I got this positive feedback, I said, okay, let me just begin. And I'm so thankful to those first 10 people who really were, they were the wind beneath my wings, like they say. And that kind of kickstarted this whole journey. It's been 2+ years now.
Wow, that is awesome. I love that. Well, let's jump into your dreams, goals, and vision for your company, but also for your life.
I love this question, because I feel like the reason I kickstarted this was not because I wanted to have this, I wanted to be an entrepreneur. I wanted to have this successful business. It was more about, I wanted to pursue something that felt fulfilling to me. So that's like the bigger goal that I have. I want to build a purposeful life. And this falls beautifully within that, that overall umbrella dream of mine. So within that, I obviously have short-term goals and long-term goals. And, one of the biggest things is to travel more, because I think travel was the one thing that led me to this idea. So travel more comes within my bucket goals, as many countries as possible. And of course, grow my platform, and come up with innovative ideas to obviously address the main objective, again, like I mentioned, is to support emerging artists. But essentially, the core idea behind this switch in career is to kind of find something that excites me, that helps other people. It's not just about me, it's about building a community that we help each other and support each other. So that I would say would be my lifelong goal as such.
Gotcha. So just building that purposeful life and one that gives you energy and is focused on serving others.
Correct.
I love that. And so you said you're at 47 artists right now?
Yes.
Do you guys have a goal for 2022 of how many independent artists you're shooting?
I actually don't, because I feel like if you have, that kind of limits me. When I kickstarted the platform, I kickstarted, like I said, with 10 people from 10 countries. And in the corporate field, you always work with goals. You always work with targets and frameworks, and it's very rigid. So I wanted to do something completely different from that. So I never focus in terms of, by the end of 2022, I need to hit 100 people, because I think that, your energy then gets diverted into chasing that number versus building up something that is long lasting. It's more about the kind of propagating the objective. So I would rather say that instead of having a numbers goal, it's more of a vision goal for me in that sense, which is trying to tap into as much exciting talent as possible, unique talent from around the world, because all these artisans, they all make very unique handmade products, and they either have learned that from their ancestors. It's something that they has a cultural legacy or a historical legacy, or there are people who have learned that and completely changed that and made something very contemporary. So I would rather focus on the content versus the number. So in that sense, my goal for 2022 is to kind of introduce talent that we have not seen as yet. So for example, we just launched, we have something on a platform called Artist in the Spotlight. And we kickstarted the year with a fantastic sculptor from South Korea. This person has very avant-garde kind of style, very off the, not run-of-the-mill kind of a style. And it was very exciting for me to kind of set the tone for 2022 with something that people have not seen. We've got a great response already. So when we started off the platform earlier, we showcased emerging artists, but it was kind of things we've seen before. Painters who work with acrylic art, or people who work with leather goods, but this person that we launched in 2022 I have never seen something like that before. So that would be my goal, to kind of now be the platform that presents unexpected talent to the world.
Gotcha. I love that. Just curious, with the crypto space and NFTs, have you guys thought about combining that? Because I know art and NFTs, I don't know a lot about it, but I know there's some connections there.
I know, it's something that I feel I need to educate myself more about, because to be honest, just like you, I'm in the same boat. It could be the world is moving in that direction. I just want to wait and watch to understand whether this is something that's going to be the way the world operates, or it's something that's going to be trendy for some time. And it's great, because even if it's trendy and you kind of introduce talent that kind of aligns with that, great, because in the end it supports the person. But to be honest, just like you, I'm not very well educated in this. And I'm, a lot of the artists and artisans that we introduce, they essentially want to be left alone to make their stuff. So these kinds of things, these were some of the things that I remember speaking to people, and they were like, this is so overwhelming. I don't even know. I don't want to like do an online store. I don't want to do media promotions. I just want to sit with an idea and make it. So I feel like these things somehow, as exciting as they may be, I think for people who genuinely love to create, it's almost sort of a distraction, because you need other people you would rather hand it over to someone else who knows that well to do it, instead of kind of saying, hey, why don't you make an NFT? Because half the people would not know what that means. And it's overwhelming for an artist because the process itself is so challenging for someone who's creative, right? When people think of, when you see a painting, for us as lay people, when you're looking at a painting, say you see flowers or you see a landscape, but every artist I've spoken to, they've always said that, when we started the process, we had no idea what was going to come out of this whole thing. And there was so much angst, and we were angry and we were frustrated. But you don't see that when you see the painting,
Yeah.
right? So most of the people that I spoke to, they said, we just need space and time to just be alone and come up with our own things. So I feel like crypto, NFTs, social media is great, because you actually get an opportunity to present the talent to an entire globe versus, just your little city or even a country. But in many ways, it hampers the process, the creative process, because you're clouding the mind with too many things. And in the end, the product that you create may actually not be as pure as you had thought of it. So in that sense, we do introduce I would say, new avenues and new techniques, but essentially my platform aims to let the creators create, and for us to kind of do all the other things that are possible to bring them to the forefront.
Gotcha. I love that. So let's dive into a bit more about specifically what your platform does. So what are some of the things you guys have put in place to make sure that the creators can create?
Absolutely. So there are a bunch of things, and I have to say, I have to thank COVID for this, because essentially before COVID, it was just about me, showing these creations at stores and people liking them and picking them up and, placing orders. Because of COVID, we had to completely switch to an online model. And it actually led to a lot of creative avenues that we could introduce. So we do something called a portfolio video. This is just one of the ideas. Essentially, in the past, art galleries, if you wanted to introduce someone new, you would have the person meet the person at the gallery and show the work. So it was more of a physical one-on-one kind of a meeting, and I would be in, representing the artist. With COVID, all that stopped because there was no physical meeting at all. Till date, art galleries don't function. They've completely changed the way. So there were a lot of people who are emerging artists who said, we have all this work and we don't know how to show it. Can you help us? Because we have no idea how to do that. So it's essentially a media kit or a portfolio video that we create for artists. And because I'm in touch with, and I have collaborations with art galleries, I know what each art gallery is looking for. So we present that information or that content related to the artist to these galleries, customized to these galleries, and which is one of the avenues that we have introduced in 2021, which was very, very popular, because it's essentially you still had the one-on-one, but you actually had it in form of a media content. So people would just click on that and say, oh, this is Timothy's work. This is, he does this landscape painting. This is his style. So kind of putting in all the information so it's quick, easy, and people know exactly who you are. This was, again, something I thought was tremendously helpful to people who didn't know how to present their stuff. They were good at creating stuff, but they didn't know how to showcase their, I would say, their talent. So that was one thing. We also introduced something called limited edition. This came out of a conversation that I had with a lady in Romania who said, I've heard that when you present a collection, you need to have 20, 25 pieces. And unfortunately, I don't have the resources to make 25 pieces, but I have resources to make 2 things. But her technique was so unique. I had never seen jewelry like that. So I said, okay, how many pieces can you make? And she said, I can only make 2. And I said, fine, just make 2. And we introduced that as a micro collection, which essentially meant that if you bought that one piece, she would never make that piece ever again for anyone else. So we introduced something called limited edition, which also again provides freedom to the artist, because she was so thrilled that, she could present those two ideas. Otherwise, she was like, oh my God, do I have to wait till I make 20 pieces? Because it's a waste of my time. I'm waiting for someone to see this. No one's ready to show my collection unless I have 25 pieces. So it's kind of like a cat and mouse game, because you're waiting for 25 pieces, but you don't have the means to make 25 pieces. So instead, we did something called limited edition, where we showed, if someone fit our criteria, we would say, tell us how much you can make, tell us what you can make, and we will present it that way. So we have someone who just made one painting for us, and we presented that in the limited edition. And so it kind of is a lot of the rules that have been imposed by, I would say, structured creative outlets, things like this. When you put on a fashion show, you need 15 pieces of clothing. Those are like certain rules that the industry has set in place. And of course, it works well. But there is this whole other group of people who cannot afford to do that, but yet are extremely talented. So they deserve a place, and they deserve, some space in this entire arena to show their stuff. So these were I would say, two of my favorite initiatives that we launched last year. One was limited edition, and the other one was the media kit, also known as the portfolio video.
Gotcha. I love that. And so with the media kit and limited edition, are you guys also kind of handling social media and online presence for them?
Yes, absolutely. We do help them through all of those things. Like I said, all of our artists, they're all associated with certain art galleries by this time. Once they join our network, we, since we have connections with various galleries, we now know who would be a good fit for what. And, we kind of make sure that they are aligned together. So we do make sure that when someone joins our network, they are aware of where they would be showcased. So it would not just be our platform. It would also possibly be an art gallery that just focuses on ceramics, or, something that just focuses on, like I said, landscape paintings. So now we've built these connections. So it's not just us, but their work is seen through many, many other outlets.
Gotcha. And how did you go about building the relationships with the different art galleries?
That has happened over time. And, it is, again, this is one of the reasons why I know this is a question that's going to come up later in the show about, it started with one conversation with one gallery, and then typically, that person introduced me to someone else. So I always feel like it starts with one conversation, and that's truly, it's been very organic. We don't do paid promotions. We don't do any of those things. Whatever we have, whatever following that we have on social media, or the customer base that we have, it's all been organic. I believe in spending my time building great content and presenting people in the right way possible, rather than, I would say, chasing numbers in that sense. So my connections with art galleries have, again, it's been built over many, many years. And I would say the first 2-3 business relationships that we set with galleries almost took a year plus. But then after that, it's kind of fallen in place, because now they know who we are, and they're comfortable introducing us to other galleries who have other interests. And, it's now once you set up I would say, a trust with one person, I think it's more like a domino effect, because then they introduce you to other people. So I'm very slow in my brand building. I'm like a sloth, because I'm like the opposite of trying to, rush with the numbers and rush with orders and things like that. I want to take my time with this.
Yeah, absolutely. I love that. That is a great way to do it, because if you take your time and you do it right, that's what creates something that lasts.
I agree.
Whereas I feel like if you're shooting for numbers, sometimes, not always, but sometimes you can sacrifice some important things to hit those numbers,
Yes, agree.
Awesome. Well, if there were 1 or 2 people that you could meet right now, and they would help you take the next step towards your dreams and goals of building a purposeful life and supporting more emerging artists, who would they be, and how would they do it?
There's not one person in particular that I would that I have in mind as such, but I would definitely, I think, fellow curators who have been on this path, who have, who are in sync with my way of thinking. I know there are so many curators in the world, and everyone has their style. But I would love to connect with curators who from around the world who are more in sync with my style. So I actually I'm always in search of people like that. So I would say people like those would be hugely inspirational to me, because I feel like it would be easy for me to explain the way I want to do this. And because they've done it before, I would love to get their thoughts on how to build this. So no particular person in mind, but I would say people who don't walk the straight line, people who've tried a bunch of things, but their goal has been to kind of shine the spotlight on creative talent in unique ways.
There we go. I love it. Just curious, have you ever seen the show White Collar?
Yes. I have.
So I totally didn't know that there were a lot of art curators in the world. Like, I thought you were like really like it was just you.
No. It's a very interesting field, and I think it's like I said, there are people who are tremendously, they're world famous. You name them, and they work. So the beauty of being a curator is that you need to have your own style. If you don't have your own style, you're really not going to last. Because when I'm talking to you, say if you're a curator, and I would have to explain my point of view. If I don't have a point of view, no one's going to be interested in working with me or being associated with my platform. So I think there is space for everyone. And that's why it's interesting to meet as many creators as possible, just to get a sense of how did they get on this path? How have they lasted? What makes them tick? Those are the kinds of things I think would be very, very, it would be nice to like sit down and have a conversation about that, because it's not competition. It's mainly about collaboration or understanding where the other person comes from, and then listening to that and taking stuff that you can apply and come up with your own style. Because you won't survive if you copy someone else. I don't think anyone lasts too long with that kind of a mind process.
Yeah, for sure. Would you be interested in meeting aspiring art curators?
Absolutely. Because, I'm always, the one thing I have learned is the most unexpected conversations have led to the most fantastic ideas for my platform. So I never ever say no to meeting someone new or speaking to someone new. And I don't care if they're well known or they are just coming up, or it's someone who just woke up and was a teacher for 20 years and said, no, you know what, I actually am, I am a painter. I love to, because only by talking to people on an ongoing basis do you understand how people get inspired to create art. And if I shut myself down and shut myself up and say, no, this is the only way, again, it's going to lead to my brand kind of stagnating. Art is a dynamic process. The art doesn't go, it's not a straight line. It's very up and down because the process is very irregular. So the more creative people you speak to, I think your mind kind of expands a little more, and then you have more space to understand other people. It's all about storytelling. Art is about storytelling, right? So if you're not listening to stories, you're not learning anything. So I'm always a big fan of speaking to as many new people as possible.
There we go. I love it. Well, what's the most important one or two things that everyday people can do to really help you get to your dreams and goals?
This might sound repetitive, but I feel like, and I don't think many people do that. I didn't do that for the longest time, but it is something that sounds very silly, but I do it on a daily basis, and it is to speak to a new person every day. Today it's you, and it does not necessarily have always to be about your work and your goals. It's just about overcoming that hesitation to approach someone new. Because I've always noticed that if there are a couple of days when I don't speak to someone new, or I've not reached out to someone new, you automatically, your mind starts getting a little dull, and then you can't really innovate. You can't you're not excited anymore. So I feel like the one thing that I would tell everyone, and it sounds so silly, I mean, it really sounds very silly, it's to just have a conversation with a new person. It could be about anything. It does not have to be about your work, but I really think, one, it helps you come out of your own comfort zone. It's not easy to talk to someone new. As we get older, our social circles also get narrower because you only meet your colleagues, or you only go to that one coffee shop, or you just go to that one newspaper stand. Your life kind of comes down to a few things that you do every day. And it took me a while also, when I first quit my corporate job, to realize that, wow, on a daily basis there are only 10 people I speak to. It's my neighbor, it's my colleague, it's my so it took me a while to get over this kind of not an introverted kind of an element, but this kind of hesitation that I had imposed on myself. Like, no one will stop you if you go and approach someone and talk to them, or it doesn't have to be forced. But I would say it helps you get out of your comfort zone, and it helps you discover something new. If you don't speak to someone new, I don't think you learn anything new.
Absolutely. I love that. And I really love it because Brad Lee, he's like a sales guru guy, but he says this one thing that I really, really love. He's like, everything happens because of like other people. Like, there's nothing that happens like you doing it alone in isolation.
Absolutely. I agree with that 200%. Everyone, it's such a myth that, you are the master of your destiny, you are doing everything by yourself. It's not true, because we live in society. Nothing happens without someone else helping you. You may not even know, but it is a group effort. It takes a village, like they say. So I am so in sync with what you're saying right now.
Yeah, no, and I love it because you realize that even in like the simplest parts of your lives, like driving to the grocery store, like you were only successful in that endeavor because everybody else was also driving safely. Like, if everybody else was driving chaotically, you wouldn't have made it,
So true.
Just blows my mind. But I love it. Talk to somebody new every day. It'll change your life, because if you speak to new people, new things can happen. If you speak to the same people, same things are probably going to happen.
Absolutely. And it's a way to challenge yourself. I feel like what happens is, when you kind of get on a certain track, on a daily track, you get comfortable. And the more comfortable you get, the more scared you feel about trying something new. It is scary. Like, if you see a child versus, a grown up, children are free. They go and say anything, they talk to anyone, they sing, they dance. They're so, uninhibited. They have no reservations about anything. As we get older, we put rules for ourselves, and it makes us a little more narrow, not just in the physical sense. It just makes us narrow overall. The only way to break out is to, another one cliche is, do something that kind of makes you uncomfortable, something that kind of pushes you out of your comfort zone, whether it could be anything. It could be trying something new. It could be reading a new kind of book. It doesn't always have to be about social interaction. It's just about pushing yourself a little bit outside your comfort zone.
Yep, absolutely. I love it. Well, let's jump into our thriving three now. Our first question is, what's your favorite book, movie, or podcast? Pick one.
This is, again, more of a philosophical book that I use as a guide. It's called the Mahabharata. It's an epic book, and it's based in Hindu mythology. I'm Hindu. And many people look at it as a religious book, but it's more of a philosophy, and it's more of a guide as to how to live your life. And this whole thing that I have now, after having started Let's Curate, of having a purposeful life, there are a lot of messages and I would say steps to kind of how to it's about fulfilling your duty. It's about trying something new. It's about conquering your fears. It's about putting yourself out there. These are things just come out, and it's a book that very famously most learned people who do philosophy or read philosophy, they say that no one can ever say that that book completely. It's impossible to say that, because every time you read it, you learn something new. So I would say that book is a constant for me, because there are times when I feel stuck, or I feel a little down, if I feel like, this was not a great day. It just lifts me up, and it's more about trying to kind of understand how you can change, how you can overcome obstacles. So that book for me is, I would say, a constant guide. I'm very influenced by that.
I love it. One more time on the name of it.
Mahabharat. It's
Gotcha.
MAHA. It's a long one. I could write it here on chat if you want to like.
Yeah, that'd be great.
Yeah.
And what is one way that you like to take care of yourself?
Just taking long walks by myself. It's like I have 2 kids and I have, as most people who have children will know, you don't have much time to yourself. I think one way I kind of refresh myself is either to go on very long solo walks, or the other thing, which is, again, it sounds very funny, but I live in New York City. And the one thing I like to do is go on these long cab rides with no destination. So I sit, I get in a location and I'm like, let's just go downtown. And it's a good 30-minute drive. And there have been times when the taxi guy would be like, where exactly? And I'm just like, let's just go downtown. And there have been, but there's something very, very relaxing. It's almost therapeutic to be in like a moving vehicle and you're just watching the world go by. And it just, for me, it's very relaxing and it's also energizing at the same time. So yeah, these are the 2 things I just do. It's low cost and it's high value.
That's epic. I love it. And what is one action step that you can take right now to continue helping emerging artists or meet fellow curators?
I think one of the things I need to do is kind of come up with more initiatives, because I think, like I said, because this field that I've chosen is so dynamic, I need to make sure that I come up with new kinds of partnerships and new kinds of ideas to keep it dynamic. Just because I started limited edition, one of the lessons that I learned during COVID was that you just can't stop with one idea. You had one good idea, that's great. It's working well, good for you. Move on to the next one. Like you can always, that's always there. You've built a great product, or you've built a great avenue. It doesn't end there. With art, because it is so, because it's not linear, I need to kind of innovate on a daily basis or as regularly as possible. So one of the things I do want to kind of keep in mind and always remind myself is to never stop at a certain thing and say, oh, I've done it all. I never ever want to be in that position where I think, or I trick myself into thinking that, oh, this is all I can do. There is always something you can do. So I would say my objective would be to kind of hopefully come up with as many dynamic ideas as possible to keep the mission going, which is to promote and kind of showcase talent from around the world in the best way possible.
There we go. I love it. I got one last question for you. So you know how there are people on the planet who have a really fixed mindset. They're not willing to accept help, and they're not willing to accept change. Sometimes they live their whole life like that, and sometimes they'll die like that, unfortunately. And other times they'll change to more of a growth mindset, willing to accept help and willing to accept change. In your opinion, what is the catalyst that causes that change?
I think this is something that, again, it builds up over the years. This feeling that I had of being jaded, I didn't realize how jaded I was until the day I woke up and I was like, this idea has been in my mind for 10 years. Why am I not doing anything about this? It was scary. It meant me quitting my job. But, you have to get to that point. I feel, unfortunately, for a lot of people, including me, I had to get to the bottom of that feeling, where you're just like, it's not fun anymore. It's not fun going into work anymore. I'm not learning anything. It's drab and life is dull. I think when you get to that point, there are 2 kinds of people, exactly like you said. There are people who will, because it makes everyone uncomfortable. I don't think human beings as a species are meant to be a one-track person. You're never, human beings are, I feel like the reason we have survived is because we've adapted. So when you get to that position in life, when and you've recognized that, okay, life is not, I've come to a full stop. Like, I'm just doing the same thing every single day. There are, like you said, two kinds of people who, because it's a scary point in your life, and you have two ways to go. Either you say it's too much work to change, or you say now is the time to change, or else I'm just going to be, dead philosophically very, very soon. So I think it's a very personal choice at that point. So I'm not sure whether I would have something where I would say, oh, this is the catalyst, because the catalyst for me could be different from what the catalyst is for you. It took me 10 years in the corporate world to wake up and be like, God, I don't want to do this anymore. But for someone else, it could be someone who's in college and who's like, I'm studying this, but this really doesn't work with what I want to do. I'm not. And then, having to switch at that point. But I feel like every person gets to that point sooner rather than later, or at some point. The catalyst is something that is more of a personal thing. I'm not sure if there's a universal catalyst as such. It comes down to, it's like when you have bad habits, right? When you have bad habits, you know it's not something that's great for you. You're not exercising. You feel terrible. It's because you're not exercising. So either you wake up the next day and you're like, okay, enough is enough. I'm going to go for a run. Or you just say, you know what? It's okay. I'm just going to give up. It's fine. It's easy being this way. It depends on the kind of person you are at that point. So it's hard. It's hard for me to say if there is like one thing that can ignite, that feeling for everyone. I think it's more of it's a very personal kind of a choice.
Yeah, I love that. And I think the important thing is that it is a choice. It's like nothing's going to force you to do it. Ultimately.
Exactly. That is so true. I agree with you 100%. That is, I think this is what you just said has, is like the line of this entire podcast. Everyone has a choice, and people assume that you don't have a choice, but it's not true. No one can ever box you in a corner and say, that's where you're going to be for the rest of your life. I think you can wake up and just be like, no, I do have a choice to do something different. I may be an utter failure at it. I may suck at it. I may fail at it. But, either you say, okay, I'm so scared of failure that I'm not going to try it and just sit in my box. Or you just say, let me just take a chance. And I never know, it might take me someplace exciting. Yeah. So I'm so happy you said that. It is all about choice in life. I think everyone has a choice, and it depends on whether you want to act upon it or you decide not to act upon it.
Absolutely. Well, there we go. Meghana, is there anything else that you want to chat about before we sign off?
No, I think you covered all the important points. It was a wonderful conversation. Thank you so much. I love talking about these things because, I just feel, and to kickstart the year with an amazing conversation like this is fabulous. This is one, I learned something from you today. And, that's the message that I want to kind of give out to people, that this is why I like speaking to people, because you can be only in your mind, or you can let your mind expand. Your mind will just do what you want it to do. So I'm very thankful that I got this opportunity to speak to you. And I think you've covered all the things that I would have liked to chat about. So thank you so much.
Of course. And thanks for coming on the show. And if you guys are listening to this and you loved what Meghana had to say, you love her style as a curator, make sure to connect her to other curators and other emerging independent artists. As we always ask, send this podcast to 1 to 3 people need to hear this message. Shoot us a 5-star review on iTunes, and we're out.